G'day ladies and gents, this is Kai for Top 3 Gaming. Today we will be looking at the basics of buoyancy, what objects can float, and how to dynamically change the buoyancy of an object. A submarine is an incredible vehicle capable of dynamically changing its buoyancy to choose what depth it wants to hover at. Using complex systems of pumps and ballast tanks aided with engine power and dive planes, a submarine can quickly descend to its desired depth. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how a submarine works, we need to understand what buoyancy even is and how it works. Simply put, buoyancy is the upward force exerted by a liquid, usually water, on an object that is partially or completely submerged. We say that an object floats when its buoyancy is greater than the weight of the object. Otherwise, the object sinks. A ship made out of a material that otherwise sinks can float by artificially impacting the density, and therefore overall mass of the object. A solid steel ball will sink, while a hollow steel ball full of air will float if made at the right size. However, if you start to change the fluid inside the ball, say add water to it, then at some point the object will no longer have enough buoyancy and start to sink. Archimedes' principle states that an object is buoyed up by a force equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. That is why ships are classified based off displacement, or the weight of the water displaced to give space for the ship, which equals to the weight of the ship. This concept of displacement is how one can calculate how much weight has been loaded onto a ship. Have you ever seen these markings at the stem, amidship, and stern of the ship? You likely know them to be draft markings, but there's more to it than that. The volume of the ship below the water at each of those markings is known and usually available for use in the ship's manuals. Using these tables, the loaded weight of the ship can be calculated. These markings therefore essentially act as a sort of weight scale for the ship. But what if you want to design a ship that can also submerge, otherwise known as a submarine? To submerge a submarine, the buoyant force needs to be overcome, which means we need to increase the displacement of the ship. At sea, there is nothing that can be added to the weight of the ship, so how does that work? Well, it turns out there is something all around us that we can use: the sea itself. By pumping water into tanks in the ship, known as ballast tanks, the ship can dynamically change its weight and affect the buoyant force needed to keep the ship afloat. Once enough water is pumped into the ship, the buoyant force needed to keep the ship afloat is greater than the buoyant force that can be supplied to the ship at sea level, and the ship begins sinking. In our case, this sinking is controlled. In the case of this Porter-class destroyer, it isn't controlled. Since the hydrostatic pressure of the water also increases with depth, the buoyant force acting on a submarine also increases with depths. So, regardless of the depth of the ship, there will theoretically always be a point where the buoyant force overcomes the weight of the ship. That's it for the basics of buoyancy. Thank you for your attention. I hope you learned something.